Back to One is presented by the HBO documentary film Being Mary Tyler Moore, directed and produced by James Adolphus and produced by Lena Waithe, Ben Selko, Deborah Martin Chase, and Rishi Rajani. The film is currently available to stream on Max. Being Mary Tyler Moore chronicles the screen icon whose storied career spanned nearly 60 years. With unprecedented access to Mary Tyler Moore's vast archive, the film details the life of a complex artist who shifted the dynamics of how women were portrayed on television, had far-reaching influence on the business through her own production company, and helped effect great change through her work as a global advocate for diabetes research. Weaving the actress's personal narrative with the beats of her professional accomplishments and reflections from colleagues such as Rob Reiner, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Felicia Rashad, and Jim Burrows, the documentary highlights Moore's groundbreaking roles and the indelible impact she had on the generations of women who came after her. Being Mary Tyler Moore is currently Emmy eligible for Outstanding Documentary Special. More at HBOMaxFYC.com.
I've just had this inherent belief. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here. I just have zero entitlement in my system. I believe I never had any business being here. And if I got here at all, here being this industry and some level of success, that I should be grateful and I should be willing to move around to wherever they might want me. And I think as long as you can keep that approach, there's going to be a healthy place for you.
Filmmaker magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Mark Duplass is an actor. He sat down with me in New York City to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new character, whether that's a character that you actually wrote or one that somebody else wrote? Like, what do you need to kind of begin to kind of wrap your arms around playing this person when it finally comes to that?
I don't need anything. I think that my general approach to acting came from being a filmmaker first, being a writer first, being a producer first. I think at my core, I am a writer and a producer who happened to be able to perform in those early movies because there was no one else there anyway. So that ethic has in some ways stayed pretty consistent throughout my whole career. I didn't go to acting school. I've taken a couple of acting classes. I think my teachers would tell you there's very little promise there. That's not false humility, that's just real. And so my journey as an actor truly began with, okay, I'm the writer of this piece, I'm the producer of this piece, maybe I'm the director, maybe I'm co-directing with Jay, maybe Jay's just directing. So I could cast someone else in this piece, and they might be a better actor than me, but by me being the author of this piece and knowing I can improvise, pivot, shift, do whatever I needed to do in the moment as a performer to improve the writing, the production, everything of the piece, holistically, that makes me the best choice to do this. And from there, it really didn't change until I was cast in somebody else's work for the first time when I didn't think as a writer, producer, and I was just thinking as an actor.
And what was that like, though? That must have been scary.
Yeah, it was a little scary because I think there was a part of me that felt like, all right, my value as an actor is this multi-limbed octopus, and if I chop off some of those limbs, the writing, producing, directing side of it, will the one-limbed octopus of just acting be enough?
Right.
And so it was a little scary, But I'm a very practical person when it comes to like indie filmmaking. I'm sort of like, half left brain, half right brain. So when I started doing acting roles in like, my friend Joe Swanberg's movie or my friend Craig Johnson or Lynn Shelton's first movie, I was thinking like, well, I hope I'm good, but even if I'm not quite as good as everyone else could have been in this role, I'm an executive producer here who can help this movie get into Sundance. Like I was thinking very holistically in all of those kinds of things. And it wasn't until I sort of got in those movies that I started to get into the art of a performance more, because I was thinking much more just pragmatically.
Mm-hmm. And, it must be a developing process of you as a writer, knowing after each project how you grow as an actor. And then you must be able to change kind of how you're writing for yourself, right?
100%.
Based on how you grew, based off of what you're learning from other people in every movie.
100%.
Project.
Yeah. And I think that even to this day, I'm not confident in my ability to go on a stage as an actor, take a piece of writing that cannot be changed, cannot be improvised because we're going live in theater, and reverse engineer an excellent performance with the limit of those words being intact. I still feel and believe that I'm at my best when I have the ability to improvise a little bit, even just small things, cadences, little words, surprise the actor in front of me that I'm with. That's where I feel like my strength is. And even on a show like The Morning Show, that's like kind of a Sorkin-esque show where like, you feel the cadence of the writing. They still value my ability to improvise and shake things around. So I don't know what it would be like for me to not in some way still have the writer in me involved in my performances. And I think that's a big part of why people hire me, is because they think, oh, if Mark's in a scene with somebody and that person is phoning it in or something, Mark will throw out a completely different line, shake the whole thing up, and we like that, But I don't think anybody's hiring me if they're like, I've got my words perfectly. I just need a mechanical actor who's well-trained to come in and do this thing. I think you got better choices.
Do you think that there is some part of your wing that is not flapping hard enough because of what you just said? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you ever think like, are you even interested in seeing those wings flapping in a scary way like that?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what it would do, but at the same time, I am that pragmatist who's like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. What would it be like if I went and committed to do something on stage like that and see what that was like? And then there's this other part of my brain that's like, well, you're living in Los Angeles. I'm running a company where, I'm able to really, like, from my small corner of the sandbox, do a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
Collaborating with people who have not had the chance to make stuff. I can, make a film with them, let their voice be heard, use my platform to get it out there. That part of my brain is just like, now's not really the time for this.
Yeah.
Like, swing this excellent sword you have in your hand, as opposed to take this brittle toothpick on stage and be decimated by it, which would be good for me, for sure.
Right.
But I'm just not quite there yet. And now that I'm saying this out loud, of course, you're going to see me commit to a play in 6 months because I'm like, oh yeah, here it comes.
Well, it also feels like this Biosphere movie, I'm seeing things you're doing in this that I haven't seen you do before. It feels like more stakes as an actor in this because it's a true two-hander, and because of what's happening, which we cannot talk about.
Yes.
Did you at all think like, I want to see if I could pull some of this off?
Yeah, I'm comfortable in a two-hander. You know, when you look back at a movie like Hump Day, even there are people in the cast, like you have that. I've you know, Blue Jay,
language lessons. Yeah,
Paddleton,
that's right.
language
oh
lessons.
Oh my God, now that you say that.
So I'm very comfortable on a two-hander. I am completely aware that it's going to bore the shit out of a huge group of people, and I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a small section of people who just love it. I discovered that a while ago. I stopped trying to please everybody with that stuff. My therapist and I did great with that. So I'm like pretty good there. Now, there are different things about Biosphere beyond the inherent insecurity of can two persons carry an audience's interest for 90 minutes, which of course we're not going to talk about right now because we want people to enjoy it with fresh eyes. You know, I look at like the history of my career, starting in this industry with my brother, wrapped up spiritually, emotionally, physically together, you know, inseparable, because we felt this is an impossible thing we're trying to do, is have our voices heard in the independent film industry. No connections, nobody cares. We must remain inextricably linked. Two forces better than one, right? That lasted for like almost 10 years. And then my brother and I started to consciously uncouple for a number of reasons. Some of which being Jay really needed to feel himself. And I understood that. It was very difficult, but I understood it. I was already acting in other things anyway, so I started to be able to feel my own energy as an individual artist through doing that stuff. And at that time, I started to realize that, like, oh, well, this is interesting, because if I keep just deeply collaborating with my brother, we're gonna start repeating ourselves. Mm-hmm. So this is a good thing for me to join with other filmmakers, make different kinds of art. So like a lot of what the goal is now is, you know, using like what I think of as a couple of the things that I'm really good at. First of all, writing a quick first draft that usually includes a role for me that I think will be challenging, but that I also have a shot to be good at, and building it for someone else in my life, ideally. Case in point, language lessons, you know. Mm-hmm. Case in point, Biosphere with Sterling. And then finding a filmmaker who I can sort of pass that off to. They can make it excellent because they're willing to work harder, be more inspired than I am, honestly, as a director at this point. And that's Mel Eslyn for Biosphere, you know. And then it allows me to focus more of, okay, so how can I just put in the best performance that I can for the movie at this point, and sort of bifurcate a little bit of those roles.
Tell me what that means, what you just said about how having this person direct something you wrote actually ensures that they're going to put more passion in than you would as a director. What are you finding out about yourself there?
Yeah, a couple of things. So it's not just turning over the thing that I wrote for them to direct. It's turning over also in the script phase, because if you look at language lessons, like Natalie and I co-wrote, she directed. You look at Biosphere, Mel and I co-wrote, she's the director. So I handed off even earlier than the directing. I handed off almost in the writing phase. So it's two things. One is being really honest with myself about what are my strongest assets to bring to a project. I'm excellent at writing a first draft. Not so great at the rewrites. That's okay. I used to feel bad about that for a long time. But now I know that's just not where my strength is. So pass that off. As a I haven't directed anything in like eight or 9 years. Wow. You know, as a director, I've realized that I can direct things pretty well, but there are a lot of people out there who are willing to unilaterally give their focus to something for the 12 to 18 months that is required to make it great. I'm the head of a company, and I'm a dad, and I like to exercise. I want my life to be more in balance. I don't know a lot of super balanced, excellent directors. And until I'm willing to deliberately give it that thing that I think it requires, I shouldn't be doing it, period. And then it puts me in this lovely spot of, I feel creatively involved. I feel invested. In many cases, my company has produced and or funded the movie. I've had a part in the creation of it as a co-writer. And then I land on set and all of that can just go away. And then I can just be an actor. And I can do it with someone I trust because they've been with me as a writer. In the case of Natalie with language lessons, in the case of Mel, Biosphere. And that's just a personal preference thing, just something I really love.
What is it like on the set for her when you wrote it, you're acting in it? Like, what is the room that she has to actually fully be your director? Do you know what I mean? And this might actually be confusing to people, why you would even need a director in the moment.
Yeah. So I definitely need it. For sure. I love it. You know, Mel runs our company for us. You know, and everybody who knows anything about Duplass Brothers knows that, like, this is the company that Mark and Jay built, and this is now the company that Mel is running. You know, and she and Shuli Harrell, who are, you know, our head of production, they're the future of this company. There's no doubt. So we have this wonderful relationship that we've built over the years of, you know, Mel truly understanding how much I appreciate her voice, how much I need her there. But this was the first time she's ever directed me. And that required some conversations. And it was so fun. It was so fun because I would just, I don't know how to say this like clearly, but like Mel knows how much I value her and need her. And I know how much she appreciates everything I have done for her, that there's this incredible mutual respect and love. So there was never a moment where I didn't feel safe or she didn't feel safe. It was a question of us just talking about what and any boundaries there might be going into it. You know, so it was a lot of like couples therapy, you know, and me looking her in the eye and giving her the permission to tell me, you suck right now and this is not working, as technically her boss.
Right.
And that, we have done that before, but I just needed to like look her in the eye and have her truly understand that on that set, you know. And not only do you have permission for that, I really want you to do this for me so you can make me a good performer, you know. Also, let's consider Sterling in this matter. The three of us are going to be this tight-knit little unit. It's very important that Sterling doesn't feel that we are in some ways aligned in ways that he is not, as co-writers and producers of this thing. So involving him as early on, luckily Sterling is just a wonderful human and got that immediately. But so we had to set up that sort of energy and parameters around it. You know, and I think that, like, you know, I think Mel needed to feel from me that, as someone who's directed a lot of movies, and this is her directorial debut, I mean, she directed episodes of Room 104. She has candidly been a creative producer on so many of our projects. She's done quite a bit of backseat directing, as creative producers often do. So she knew I valued what she had to offer. But I think that was a hump for us to get over initially, which is, you know, Mel having that wonderful first idea, which happened organically on day one, which was, that was great, Mark. Why don't you try it a little bit like this? I didn't have that idea. Me lighting up, she seeing me light up, feeling the value. You know, so we had to work through, like, get some of that stuff in place. I mean, I don't know if it's honestly going to be, you know, never say never, but I don't know if it's going to get any better for me than being directed by someone who loves me and respects me so much, and like understands me creatively like that.
Yeah. How often have you found yourself in a scene with someone that is not alive in the same way that you are, both improvisationally and just authentically. And how did you know then that Sterling would be? Because he is. But I would imagine like this is like a kind of a worry when it's somebody like that, where you can't maybe bring him through a traditional audition process, right?
You don't audition Sterling K. Brown. You just make an offer.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could have found out right then and there, like that this is an amazing actor in a traditional sense.
Yes.
And he thrives in that. And then the way you work, though, suddenly he shuts down.
Yes. So because you can't audition someone of that caliber, what I do is I do a lot of research. I call a lot of people who have worked with the people I'm going to work with. And who know me enough to know, hopefully there's some crossover, to know my process. If they don't know it, I explain it to them. How do you think this would work? I watch a lot of interviews and just get the energy. I mean, you see an interview with Sterling, you know right away there's a fluidity, there's a looseness, there's a presence to him that make me feel good. We talked about it beforehand, so I try to be very clear about what the process will be like. You know, Mel and I discussed it with him and see how that hits, because he does have a very strong theater background, you know? And so, are you a text is God person? Is it going to be okay, you know, if we move things around, you know?
Yeah.
And my sense is...
And okay when you're moving things around.
Yes, exactly. And my sense is that if someone is interested in that, they'll be excellent at it. I don't need to know that they can do it. I just need to know that they're a good performer, who is generally a present human being and listening, and that they're interested in it. Because I remember talking to Paulson before we did Blue Jay together. She's just like, I haven't done this. I don't know if I'm going to be any good at this, you know? But I was like, are you curious? She's like, yeah. I was like, you're going to be great. That's all that's required. So it really isn't rocket science. So to that portion of your question, like the vetting of it, I don't know. When you've got a wonderful human being, like they tend to be good. It's not a big concern I'm going to have. That being said, I have found myself in scenes with more day player actors who I find are protecting themselves. They have rehearsed a scene so heavily in the mirror that they feel either I got to get this piece of tape and I've only got a half a page to do it and I want to make sure I nail it down. And they've gotten in their head about it because it's a break opportunity, that they're not ready to come in as, frankly, loose, limber, and I say this, it sounds bad, quote unquote, unprepared as I am often into the scene, that we can feel it. That's more often than not where it occurs to me, you know? And depending on the scene, honestly, sometimes it's like, you know what? This is really good, and I'm gonna come to you on this thing. I don't need to like blow this thing up. And it's a short half-page scene. It's kind of perfunctory, and we're just at the foot of a threshold of a door. Like, I'm gonna come to you. And so like I try to be generous in those moments. But if it's not working, I will blow it up with an improvisation or something energetically to try and move it around a little bit. And that is something that has been interesting for me, is like, I guess because a lot of my directors know that I am a producer and a writer and director, they often feel comfortable with me, and maybe they feel comfortable with other actors like this, but I get the assumption they're more comfortable to come to me and be like, hey dude, this is kind of stiff across from you. Will you do something? And I like to offer up myself as like a friend of the court kind of thing. Like, right. And I really like, you know, just speaking candidly, like, I like that role. I get off on that, you know. I have to be careful. My wife and I call it like, I can't fall into the trap of trying to be the special boy all the time, you know, that everybody loves, because like I gotta like be a grown up and not a people pleaser all the time. But I relish that role, you know, of like, hey Mark, like this isn't quite what we hoped it would be. Like, get in there and thrash some stuff up. You know, that's really fun for me.
You've kind of hinted at this just now, but I've heard you say that you actually keep yourself from knowing the lines really well.
Yes.
Because you want this kind of reaching thing to happen. And But I'm imagining that this can get kind of scary on something like the morning show.
Yes. Yes.
Where they're trying to reach the end of the day or whatever. And it's a whole different process. But so do you fully go in there still with the same approach?
Yes and no. When it is a nice 4-page, 2-person scene, and I know we're going to be cross-covering the scene, and there's room for mistakes and room for improvisation, and the timing of it is not critical because the editing is where it's going to come together, I can go in unprepared. That's great. But when it's a 2-minute, highly orchestrated walk and talk that we're trying to get in a oneer, and the pacing of the dialogue is critical in order to end up at the right spot where that person hands you the papers, I know now to be extra prepared. And I sacrifice that fluidity because I think that fluidity will add more problems than it will benefits in that scenario,
But what did you find when you are that prepared? Do you feel like suddenly one of your tools is gone?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah. But it's not what that scene is about normally. Right. That scene is about energy. It's about pace. It's about the music of the dialogue. I mean, we're going straight into Sorkinville, you know? Yeah. And so it's a loss of one of those tools, but it's not a tool that I needed for that scene necessarily anyway, and the scene didn't necessarily demand it. Now, I will add one thing to that. What does often happen in some of those scenes is I am not the kind of performer that loses himself in a scene and wakes up after cut and is like, oh, I don't know where I was so there. There is always a part of my brain that is consciously on. And I am so glad that the rest of the world doesn't see that. And they say, man, you really seem really in it. I'm like, good, because I'm walking down a hallway and I'm thinking, oh, I only have 9 steps to get there. Before I thought I was going to have 14, and I got to either speed this dialogue up or cut it down so that when I get there, or vice versa, I now have shoe leather time to do this. And this is me tooting my own horn, but I'm really good in those moments. They started writing these walk and talks with me at the center of them in season 1. So Mark has this elasticity thing. And so he will add a line of dialogue that's not too bad, or he will cut one out that will make the timing work. And Billy, who I just God, Billy is just the greatest. He's so damn handsome and confident. When I met him, I was kind of intimidated. But you meet him, you realize he's the most neurotic and insecure person on the planet, particularly as a performer, And we would have these scenes sometimes where I'd be walking around the hallway for 2 minutes, handing off papers, getting this from this, throwing a line of dialogue, and we'd get right up to him at the last second, and he would panic and blow it right there. And he'd be I'm so sorry. But I've come to relish that kind of thing, So while I don't have all of the elasticity to surprise an actor, make it, organic with an improvisation, there's its own level of fun to it.
You have famously said that to filmmakers, the cavalry isn't coming. I rewatched that speech. It feels like it's from another planet because it was 7 years ago.
Wow.
So is there even a cavalry anymore? Is it what's the analogy now? Are we even is there even an apparatus like that? How far out of it are we? And it's 20 years ago that you met all of these people that probably kind of changed your life, right?
Yeah.
Bujalski and Swanberg in 2003, maybe, right? That's 20
years ago. Yep.
And when you think about how, we should have come with technology to a place where filmmakers feel free from this apparatus and are just putting stuff out there and controlling but instead we're still trying to fit this square peg into a round hole still, right? Is this embarrassing to you? Is this frustrating? Do you feel for people that are trying to do that now? Like, what is your...
I have so many complicated feelings about it.
Yeah.
So I don't feel, and I don't agree with you, that in 20 years we should have come to a better place because of this technology. And that's just my opinion. I feel like it's always felt really hard to make art that is good, and it's always felt really hard for there to be a solid marketplace in place that will allow you to make a living doing that. And I feel like there's going to be no invention in technology that's ever going to make that feel inherently better or inherently worse that I can think of right now. Everything is going to have this benefit and this trade-off thing, right? And so, you know, perfect case in point of just like, you know, I love The Puffy Chair. I really loved what we made there. Like, does that movie belong at Sundance in 2023? Absolutely not. You know, does that movie get in? Absolutely not. You know, there's 15,000 feature film submissions coming in probably this year, you know? And so I am so deeply grateful that my, you know, pretty good independent film got in and started my career the way it is, you know? But at the same time, you know, I still believe that there is only one person on this planet who can do what you can do, whoever is listening to this. And if you spend enough time, if you want it that bad, and it's totally cool if you don't, or you want to make a pivot into another art form, whatever it is, but if you are that dedicated to it and you believe it, and if you spend enough time working out who you are as an artist to find what your specific voice is, there's only one of you. And there is still a great chance that you can find your way to making that art relevant to people, and ideally a sustainable career. And I may be naive, but I believe it.
I want to push back on one thing, and here's my way into that pushback. I just acted in a short film, one scene. It was a great experience for me as a director to be on that side of it. It was shot on film, and it couldn't have been a better situation, a better director. Everything was amazing, but there was no time. I got there, and it was this tension in the air about getting this done. And I only had two. I'm Mr. Take 40. I come alive at take 40. And here is 2 takes. What I mean is that we should be in a place now where we're not constrained by that kind of thing. We're timed, where people are making films and they have so much time to do it. Instead of like being, that's what I'm talking about, being still constrained by what we think film is. You know what I mean?
I get that, and I think you're not alone in that experience. I think a lot of people feel that way. But my counter argument is that there is a lore and a mythology of the scarcity mindset of independent film, right? And I know someone listening to this is going to think, you know, well, great, Mark Duplass, because now you have success and cash. You don't have to worry about scarcity. So if you feel that way, close your ears. You're not going to like what I have to say. But maybe open your ears. My feeling is that there is an ability for all filmmakers to in some way create an environment of abundance and non-scarcity. But we're trained to think of things as scarcity. We're trained to think of, how can I get as much as I can with my limited time, my limited budget, and squeeze it in, and then we're in a scarcity and stressful mindset. And that, to me, is a place where every now and then you get lucky and you make a good piece of art, but mostly that's where good art goes to die, in my opinion. So how do you make abundance out of a place that is inherently made for scarcity? My opinion is, you know, you don't take the short film that should be made for $1,000 and try to make it for $500. You will be living in the scarcity mindset. What you do is you take the short film that should have been made for $50 and you make it for $100. And when you double the budget, because it was only $50, because it was only just that one day, and the people who could afford to give their time, and you didn't shoot on film because it was going to be too expensive, so you gave your actor that many more takes. And when you give it that breathing room and that humility, that to me is a place where the good art comes from. And I know a lot of people are going to be thinking, well, if I don't have the good production design, it's not going to like get anywhere anymore. I personally don't believe that. I still see a lot of short films at festivals, and you don't need the gorgeous short film necessarily to get in. You can still get in and make your mark with a great performance and a great story that is humbly made. And my argument to it is, what other choice do you have?
Right.
So while it's not ideal, it's the better version of it. So I try to approach my movies now as much as possible of like, how do we create abundance? How do we create that feeling of we have time, we have space? You can create that. You just have to properly budget your very tiny thing and design it that way.
Are we in a place still where it's funny to be worried about AI right now? Like I'm seeing like actors freaking out, and then I'm also seeing people laughing about it and like thinking it's a novelty. And part of the thing, when I really started thinking about it, I was like, and tell me if you think this is crazy, this could be really good for independent filmmakers in a way, because if I can have like extras that are AI, because like that's where a lot of money goes in. I mean, like to create a situation where the background really feels like that place, and they're artificial extras because they're robotic anyway. I just was an extra in something when I was more human.
Not a lot was required of you. Your humanity may have been a detriment.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yes.
That's a perfect way to say it. So it's almost like, and that is where a lot of money goes in, for me to create a situation where you believe that these characters are there.
You just basically defined the essence of who I am as an artist and why I'm still working today with that statement, which comes down to the old adage of the king who has two sons, one of which is an optimist and a pessimist, and he wants to do a test for their birthday. They're twins. And his pessimist son, he gives him a room full of all the greatest presents, and he sends the son in there. The son looks at all the presents and he says, yeah, but where's my goddamn pony, Dad? Like you said you were gonna get me a pony. And then he goes into the other room where his optimist son is, which he has filled with shit. And he opens the door and his son is gleefully flinging feces everywhere. And he says, what's going on, son? And he says, I know there's a pony in here somewhere. And that has been my mentality towards independent film forever, you know? And I came up at a time when the run was, you know, you act and write and produce your own movie, get into Sundance, and you leave Sundance behind so that you can get to Fox Searchlight and Focus Features and make Sideways and go win the Oscar, right? And I arrived there and I was so excited, and I made one of them in Cyrus that was fairly successful, and made another in Jeff Lives at Home, and it did make us a lot of money, and the business dried up right when I got there. And all of my friends and peers, I say all, most, continued to bang their head against that door and say, let me in, let me in. And I was like, guys, they don't want us here. Let's go somewhere else. HBO wants us. Let's go. And they were like, TV? Ew. And I was like, TV, yes. Am I selling out? I don't know. But they want me there, and I can still tell my stories about faces and feelings. So I'm going. And then I went there and they let me make Togetherness with me and my friend in it. I didn't even have to have a big movie star. And I did that for 2 years. And then, you know what? They canceled me. And then I had some other people there who were like, let's keep banging on the door and let us in. And I was like, guys, they don't want us here. You know what I can do though? I can go back and like make those little movies like Safety Net Guaranteed and Your Sister's Sister with the money I made from HBO. I'll go do that. And I did that. And then Netflix gave me a deal making those movies. And then they canceled me. And they're like, you're out. And then everyone's banging on the door. I was like, guys, they don't fucking want us here. And everywhere I have left, I have miserable people banging on the door to let them in.
Yeah.
And that's my thing with AI. You can spend your time just trying to keep it out of the door, banging on it, or you can be like, wait a minute, this might be coming. Right. How are we going to pivot and find the angle here that is going to work for us? And so I've just had this inherent belief. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here. I just have zero entitlement in my system. I believe I never had any business being here. And if I got here at all, here being this industry and some level of success, that I should be grateful and I should be willing to move around to wherever they might want me. And I think as long as you can keep that approach, there's going to be a healthy place for you. Now, of course, there are certain things that you don't just roll with the punches. I understand there are bigger things at play. I don't understand enough about AI to know what this can do to actors, and this could be big, you know? But I don't know. I think there's always going to be a place for the actor to do what they do. I think there's always going to be a place for the writer to do what they do. I think we will find our way. And I'm the little boy believing that there's a pony in a pile of shit. That's who I've always been.
Biosphere is the only movie. I live with two women. One of them I'm married to. The other one is her mother. This is the only movie that everyone loves in the household. Now, I've only been living with these three people together since February. But every movie I present to them, I love, they hate, they watch it, I leave. This is the only movie that has brought everyone together. We're still talking about it. And I hope it does that. I think it's going to be a giant hit. I'm sometimes right about these things, sometimes wrong, but whatever it is, it's a success in that household. So I think that's
what I need. I don't need hits anymore. I want to sit with somebody like you and have you say that to me. No, not a lot of people have seen this movie. Honestly, that means the world to me. Thank you for sharing that. It's
really true.
It's why I'm doing what I'm doing still.
Mark Duplass, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.